The rope bit into Anya Miller's wrists, drawing blood that darkened the dust beneath her bare feet. Mrs. Eleanor Thornton yanked the cord like dragging livestock through Dusty Creek's main street, her voice cutting through the afternoon heat. $50 for this worthless mute can't speak, can't do nothing but eat my food. 30 townspeople watched. No one moved. Anya stumbled, and the older woman's hand cracked across her face. The girl didn't cry out. She couldn't. She only gripped her faded blue dress tighter, as if holding on to the last shred of dignity she possessed. Ethan Mackenzie stepped from the feed store, his jaw tightening. The scar on the girl's wrist, a crescent moon shape, made his breath catch. 10 years ago, a man with a dark-haired daughter had saved his life. This was that child. $100, Ethan said. Mrs. Thornton's smile was poison. Sold. But you'll regret this. Mackenzie, leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. And now let's continue with the story. The wagon wheels creaked over 15 miles of desert road. Anya sat as far from Ethan as the bench allowed, her body rigid, eyes fixed on the floorboards. He'd tried to hand her his coat when they left town. She'd flinched like he'd raised a fist. Now he kept his hands on the reins and his mouth shut. Silver Creek Ranch appeared as the sun touched the horizon, a modest woodhouse, a windmill spinning lazily, 200 head of cattle grazing on drought-yellowed grass. Ethan pulled the wagon to a stop and climbed down, extending his hand to help her. Anya ignored it and jumped down herself, stumbling slightly. The small room on the left is yours, Ethan said, gesturing toward the house. Door locks from the inside. There's water and clean clothes. They belong to my late wife. But you're welcome to them. The girl's eyes darted to the door, then back to him, calculating escape routes. You're not a prisoner here. Ethan continued. If you want to leave, I'll give you money for the stagecoach. But you don't have to decide tonight. Anya walked past him without acknowledgement and disappeared into the house. Ethan unhitched the horses, his shoulders heavy. What had he expected? Gratitude. The girl had been dragged through town like an animal and sold to a stranger. Trust wouldn't come easy. He bedded down the horses and headed inside near midnight. The house was dark except for a sliver of lamplight beneath Anya's door. At least she was still here. Ethan collapsed into bed, exhaustion pulling him under within minutes. A sound woke him, scraping, rhythmic and persistent. He checked his pocket watch, 3 a.m, gun in hand. He crept down the hallway. The scraping came from the kitchen. Anya knelt on the floor, a brush in her raw hands, scrubbing the already clean wood planks. Her hair hung loose around her face, and her shoulders moved with mechanical precision. The bucket beside her was filled with water she must have drawn from the well in darkness. What are you doing? Ethan asked softly. She jumped, dropping the brush. Her hand flew to a piece of slate and chalk on the table. She scribbled quickly and held it up. If I don't work, will you send me back? The words hit him like a punch to the gut. This wasn't gratitude or initiative. This was survival instinct. She'd been trained like a dog work or be discarded. It's 3 a.m, Ethan said. You need to sleep. She shook her head violently and reached for the brush again. He crossed the room and gently took it from her hands. Listen to me. You don't have to earn your place here. You're not hoofbeats outside, cut him off. Ethan moved to the window. A lone rider approached in the pre-dawn darkness, As the figure came closer, lamplight caught the silver star on his chest. Sheriff William Thornton. Ethan's jaw tightened. He motioned for Anya to stay back, but she'd already shrunk into the corner, her face pale. He opened the door before the sheriff could knock. "Kind of early for a social call, isn't it?" Ethan said. Sheriff Thornton was 30, with his mother's cold eyes and a smile that never reached them. "Heard you bought yourself a girl yesterday." "Mackenzie." "Just doing my civic duty, making sure she's being treated properly." "She's fine." The sheriff's gaze slid past Ethan into the house, landing on Anya. She pressed herself harder against the wall. "Looks scared." The sheriff observed. "Looks tired." Ethan corrected. "What do you really want?" "William." The sheriff's smile widened. "My mother asked me to deliver a message. Seems the girl caused some property damage before she left, broke dishes, ruined linens, that sort of thing. Mother calculates the damages at $300. That's extortion. That's itemized accounting." The sheriff pulled a folded paper from his coat. "All documented and witnessed. You've got 2 weeks to pay the debt, or I'll have to take the girl back into Mother's custody. It's the law." Ethan's hand clenched around the doorframe. "Your mother sold her. She has no legal claim. Mother sold her labor contract, not her debt obligations. Different thing entirely." The sheriff tipped his hat. 2 weeks, Ethan. Clock's ticking." He turned his horse and rode back toward town. Ethan closed the door and found Anya holding the slate again. Her hand trembled as she wrote, "Let me go back. I don't want you to lose your home." He stared at the words, then at the girl who'd already given up on freedom. "I'm not losing anything," he said, "and neither are you." But as he spoke, his mind raced through brutal arithmetic. He owed the bank $800, due in 3 weeks. He had maybe $200 in savings. The cattle were worth something. But selling in a drought meant taking a loss. $300 more for Anya's supposed debts meant he'd need $1,100 total. In 2 weeks? It was impossible. Dawn broke hard and bright. Ethan stood in the cattle pen, counting heads and calculating losses. 50 young steers could fetch $400, maybe more if he found the right buyer. Not enough to cover everything, but it would buy time. He saddled his horse and returned to the house. Anya sat at the kitchen table, hands folded, waiting for instructions like a servant. "I'm going into town to arrange a cattle sale," Ethan said. "I'll be back before dark." He pulled his revolver from the drawer and set it on the table. "Anyone comes while I'm gone, you hide in the cellar. Don't open the door for anyone. Understand?" Anya nodded, her eyes on the gun. "I mean it." Ethan pressed. "Not the sheriff, not his deputies. No one." She wrote on her slate, "Be careful." The word surprised him. He almost smiled. "You too." The ride to Dusty Creek took an hour. Ethan headed straight for Harrison's stockyard on the east end of town. Thomas Harrison was fair, paid in cash, and didn't ask questions. The stockyard gate was open, but the office was dark. Ethan dismounted and knocked. "Tom, you in there?" A full minute passed before the door cracked open. Harrison's weathered face appeared, eyes darting past Ethan to the street. "Not a good time. Mackenzie, I need to sell cattle. 50 head, good stock. I can bring them in tomorrow." Harrison's jaw worked. Can't do it. Can't or won't. Does it matter? Harrison's voice dropped. Sheriff Thornton came by yesterday. Said anyone who does business with you might find themselves under investigation for tax irregularities. Ethan's hands balled into fists. That's not legal. Legal doesn't mean much when the sheriff's the one enforcing it. Harrison's expression softened. I got a family. Ethan. I'm sorry. The door closed. Ethan tried 3 more buyers that morning. Same answer from all of them, spoken in whispers or from behind barely open doors. The Thorntons had locked him out of every legitimate market in the county. By noon, he was riding home empty-handed, rage and desperation warring in his chest. The house came into view just after 2 o'clock. Something was wrong immediately. The front door hung open, moving slightly in the wind. Ethan spurred his horse into a gallop. Inside, chaos. Furniture overturned, cabinets emptied, his desk ransacked, papers scattered across the floor like dead leaves. The strongbox he kept hidden under the floorboards lay pried open and empty. Anya, he shouted. No answer. His heart hammered as he ran through the house. Her room untouched, the kitchen destroyed. The cellar, he wrenched open the door. Anya sat in the darkness on the bottom step. Arms wrapped around her knees, the revolver rested beside her. Unfired. Relief flooded through him. Are you hurt? She shook her head and climbed the stairs slowly. In the light, he saw her hands were shaking. She picked up her slate from the kitchen table, one of the few things left intact, and wrote quickly. 3 men. The one with the snake tattoo said his name was Jake. They were looking for papers. Said, if you keep protecting me, they'll burn this place down next time. Ethan's vision blurred red. Jake Morrison, everyone in the territory knew him. Hired muscle for people who didn't want to dirty their own hands. Mrs. Thornton's hands. He forced himself to breathe. Did they hurt you? No. I hid when I heard the horses. They didn't know I was here. Small mercy. Ethan looked around the destroyed room and started gathering the scattered papers. Account books, cattle records, correspondence, all of it would take weeks to reorganize. Then he saw it. A single sheet, yellowed with age, half hidden under the overturned table. The words at the top made his blood run cold. Deed of property transfer, Miller Ranch, 640 acres. Cochise County, from John Miller to Eleanor Thornton. Date June 15th, 1875. Consideration $1,200. Ethan read it 3 times. The signature at the bottom was shaky, irregular. Not the confident hand of a man conducting business, the desperate scrawl of someone coerced or worse. Anya, he said quietly. Come look at this. She approached and stared at the document. Her face went chalk white. The slate clattered from her hands. She picked it up with trembling fingers and wrote, That's my father's land. He would never sell it. He told me it would be mine when I grew up. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Mrs. Thornton hadn't just abused this girl. She'd stolen her inheritance. Maybe killed for it. Ethan checked the date again. June 1875, 7 years ago. How old were you when your father died? He asked. 12. It was summer. Do you remember how he died? Her hand shook so badly she could barely write. They said wagon accident. But I saw she stopped, crossed it out violently. Wrote instead, I don't remember. The lie was obvious. Whatever she'd seen had been bad enough to steal her voice. Ethan's hands clenched the paper. This wasn't just about $300 in fake damages. This was about a woman who'd built her fortune on theft and possibly murder, and who would do anything to keep that secret buried, including silencing the only witness. He looked at Anya, this girl who'd survived 7 years of abuse, who'd watched her father die and her home stolen, who'd been sold like property in the street. The strongbox was empty. $120. Gone. His cattle were unsellable. The banknote was due in 19 days. And now he knew the Thorntons weren't just trying to collect a debt. They were trying to erase evidence. They didn't come here for money, Ethan said slowly. They came looking for this deed. They thought I might have found it. Anya's eyes widened in understanding, which meant Mrs. Thornton knew there were documents that could destroy her. And she knew Anya had lived in that house for 7 years before being dragged away. The girl wasn't just an inconvenience. She was a threat. Night settled over the ranch like a shroud. Ethan sat on the porch steps, head in his hands, while Anya cleaned the destruction inside with methodical determination. Every few minutes she'd appear in the doorway with another armful of broken dishes or torn papers, her face unreadable. He should help. He couldn't move. The arithmetic was brutal and simple. 19 days until the bank foreclosed. No way to sell cattle. No money to pay the Thorntons' extortion. And now he knew they weren't just greedy, they were covering up murder. Going to the sheriff was pointless. William Thornton wore a badge, but he served his mother's interests. Going to the town council meant facing men who'd stood silent while a girl was sold in the street. There was no one. Footsteps behind him, Anya emerged carrying 2 tin cups of coffee. She handed him one and sat down on the opposite end of the step, maintaining careful distance. They sat in silence for a long while. Then she pulled out her slate. "Why are you helping me? You barely know me." Ethan stared at the coffee, watching steam curl into the darkness. "Your father saved my life 10 years ago," he said finally. "I was transporting payroll for a mining company's stupid job for stupid money. 3 men ambushed me on the road to Tombstone. Shot me in the shoulder, would have finished the job if your father hadn't come along." He touched his left shoulder unconsciously. John Miller was hauling supplies back from town. Heard the gunshots, came running with his rifle, drove them off, patched me up, let me recover in his barn for 3 days. Ethan's voice softened. There was a little girl there, maybe 9 years old, dark hair, wouldn't stop singing while she did her chores. She brought me soup and sang me songs when the fever got bad. He looked at Anya. "Your father said music heals. Said his daughter believed that more than anyone." Anya's hand trembled as she wrote, "I remember you. The man with the kind eyes who gave me a silver dollar. You kept it." She shook her head. "Stepmother took it. Like she took everything." The word stepmother carried weight. Ethan latched onto it. "Eleanor Thornton married your father after my real mother died. I was 8. She seemed nice at first. When did she change?" "The day Papa died." Ethan wanted to ask more, but Anya's posture had gone rigid. He let it drop. "Even if your father hadn't saved me," he said quietly. "What that woman did to you in town, what she's been doing to you, no one deserves that. Badge or no badge, money or no money. I won't let her take you back." Anya studied him for a long moment, then wrote, "You'll lose everything. Some things are worth losing everything for." She opened her mouth as if to speak, then caught herself. The frustration on her face was painful to watch, words trapped behind a wall of fear she couldn't break down. Before either could say more, the sound of hoofbeats approached from the road. Ethan stood, hand moving to his gun. "Get inside." But the rider called out before reaching the house. "Ethan Mackenzie, don't shoot. It's Samuel Wright." Ethan relaxed slightly. Dr. Wright was the town's physician, 70 years old, with a reputation for integrity that even the Thorntons couldn't tarnish. He rode his horse into the yard, moving with the urgency of a much younger man. "Doc." Ethan stepped forward. "What are you doing out here this time of night, Doctor?" Wright dismounted, breathing hard. "I heard what happened, the ransacking, and I know why they did it." His eyes found Anya standing in the doorway. "I need to tell you the truth before it's too late." They moved inside. Dr. Wright refused coffee, too agitated to sit. "I examined Anya Miller 7 years ago," he began without preamble. "Right after John died. Mrs. Thornton brought her in, said the girl had gone mute from the shock of losing her father. Asked me to document it for legal purposes to establish guardianship." He pulled off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "I examined her throat, her vocal cords, everything. There was nothing physically wrong. The mutism was psychological trauma-induced. I told Mrs. Thornton the girl would likely recover with time and care. But she didn't recover," Ethan said, "because she didn't receive care. She received threats." Dr. Wright's hands shook. "Mrs. Thornton came to my office privately a week later. Offered me $500 to sign documents stating the girl was mentally unfit, incapable of testifying or managing property. I refused." "What changed your mind?" Ethan asked carefully. "She threatened to reveal that I'd been providing morphine to my wife during her final illness, more than was strictly legal. Said she'd destroy my practice and have me arrested." Shame colored the old man's face. "I signed the papers. I've regretted it every day since." Anya's slate scraped. "Why tell us now?" "Because my conscience won't let me die with this secret." Tomat. Wright straightened. "And because I have proof of something else. John Miller didn't die in a wagon accident." The room went still. "I was the one who examined his body." The doctor continued. "The injuries didn't match the story. He had a stab wound to the back deep, between the ribs. I noted it in my records. Sheriff Thornton told me to rule it an accident anyway. Said there was no evidence of foul play, that raising questions would only hurt the grieving widow and child." "You have those records?" Ethan asked. "Locked in my office safe. Detailed notes, sketches, everything." Dr. Wright's voice strengthened with purpose. "With my testimony and those documents, you could petition a federal marshal in Santa Fe. Get a real investigation, outside Sheriff Thornton's jurisdiction." Hope flickered in Ethan's chest, dangerous and fragile. "You'd be willing to testify knowing what it would cost you?" "I'm 70 years old with a failing heart," Dr. Wright said. "What can they take from me that time when I should have spoken up 7 years ago? I won't make that mistake again." Anya was writing furiously. She held up the slate. "Thank you for believing me." The old doctor's eyes misted. "I should be thanking you, child, for giving me a chance at redemption." They made plans quickly. Ethan would ride to Santa Fe tomorrow. 40 miles east. Dr. Wright would gather his records and meet them at the crossroads at 9 in the morning. From there, they'd go together to petition the federal marshal. As the doctor prepared to leave, Ethan walked him to his horse. "This is dangerous for you," Ethan said quietly. "If Mrs. Thornton finds out, let me worry about that." Dr. Wright mounted with effort. "Meet me at sunrise. Don't be late." He rode off into the darkness. Ethan returned to find Anya still standing by the table, holding her slate. For the first time since he'd met her, she was smiling, small and uncertain, but real. She'd written, "Maybe we can win." Maybe we can? Ethan agreed. But as he watched the doctor's lantern disappear down the road, something nagged at him. Dr. Wright had seemed almost too eager, too ready to throw away his reputation overnight. And he'd asked no questions about where they'd found the property deed or what other evidence they might have. Just accepted their story and offered salvation. Ethan pushed the thought away. Paranoia wouldn't help them now. They had one chance at justice, and tomorrow they'd take it. Dawn came cold and clear. Ethan hitched the wagon before sunrise, while Anya packed a small bag, just the deed, her slate, and the worn dress she'd arrived in. She moved with cautious optimism, something he hadn't seen before. They left at 7 to make the 9 o'clock meeting at the crossroads, 15 miles south where the Santa Fe Road intersected with the mining trail. Dr. Wright would bring his records. They'd ride together to the federal marshal. By nightfall, they'd have the law on their side, real law, not the corrupted version wearing a badge in Dusty Creek. "Nervous?" Ethan asked as the wagon rolled over hard-packed earth. Anya nodded and wrote, "What if he changed his mind?" "He won't. You saw his face last night. That was a man ready to make things right." She wanted to believe it. He could see that want in her eyes, fragile as spun glass. The crossroads appeared at 8:45, nothing but a weathered signpost and empty desert in all directions. They pulled the wagon into the shade of a lonely cottonwood and waited. 9 o'clock came and went. 9:15, 9:30. Ethan stood in the wagon bed, scanning the horizon for dust clouds that would signal an approaching rider. Nothing but heat shimmer and silence. "Maybe he's just late," Ethan said, though unease coiled in his gut. "We'll give him another hour." At 9:45, they saw it. Not from the direction of town, but from the east, a thin column of black smoke rising against the pale sky. Ethan's blood went cold. "Stay here," he told Anya, already climbing into the driver's seat. She grabbed his arm and shook her head violently, pointing at herself, then at the smoke. It might not be. She was already climbing up beside him. They drove hard toward Dusty Creek, the smoke growing thicker as they approached. Other riders and wagons converged from farmsteads and ranches, all heading toward the same point. The town came into view. The smoke billowed from the center of Main Street. Dr. Wright's office. Ethan pulled the wagon to a stop at the edge of the gathering crowd. Flames consumed the small wooden building, orange and furious, while men formed a bucket brigade from the town well. But it was too late. The structure was already collapsing inward, sending sparks spiraling into the morning air. Ethan jumped down and pushed through the onlookers. "Where's Dr. Wright? Did anyone see him?" Martha Hayes, the boarding house owner, turned to him with tears streaming down her weathered face. "He was inside. Ethan, They're saying he knocked over a lamp sometime in the night. By the time anyone saw the smoke at dawn, the whole place was ablaze. No. The word came out flat. No. That's not. He was supposed to meet me. He was supposed to. I'm sorry, Martha whispered. Ethan's gaze swept the crowd and locked onto Sheriff William Thornton, standing apart from the bucket brigade with his arms crossed, watching, not helping, just watching with the blank expression of a man observing something expected. Behind him stood Jake Morrison, the snake tattoo visible on his forearm even from a distance. Jake met Ethan's stare and smiled. Rage blanked out thought. Ethan started toward them. A hand caught his wrist, small but surprisingly strong. Anya stood beside him, shaking her head urgently. Her eyes were wide, pleading, not here, not like this. She was right. Attacking the sheriff in front of 50 witnesses would only land him in jail or worse. But the effort of restraint nearly broke him. They stayed until the fire burned itself out, until men pulled Dr. Wright's charred body from the ruins wrapped in canvas, until the crowd dispersed with whispered prayers and suspicious glances toward the sheriff that no one dared voice aloud. Ethan and Anya returned to the wagon in silence. The ride back to the ranch was the longest 15 miles of Ethan's life. Every hoofbeat felt like a countdown to something terrible and inevitable. When they arrived, a small figure sat on the porch steps. A boy, maybe 12, holding an envelope. "Mr. Mackenzie," the boy called. "A lady paid me 2 bits to deliver this. Said to make sure you got it today." Ethan took the envelope. Expensive paper, sealed with red wax. He flipped it over. No return address. Just his name in elegant script. The boy ran off before Ethan could ask questions. Inside the house, Anya watched as he broke the seal and unfolded the letter. He read it once, then again, slower, hoping the words would change. They didn't. He read it aloud, his voice hollow. "Dear Mr. Mackenzie, by now you've heard about the tragic accident that claimed Dr. Wright's life. Such a shame. Old men and oil lamps, a dangerous combination. You're wondering, I'm sure, if it was truly an accident. Wonder all you like. Without witnesses or evidence, it remains a mystery. Much like John Miller's unfortunate wagon mishap 7 years ago. Let me be clear about your situation, Dr. Wright is dead. His records burned with him. No testimony, no evidence, no witness. Your money is gone. The $120 from your strongbox went towards settling some of the girl's debts. You still owe $180. Your deed to Silver Creek Ranch, check your strongbox again. You'll find I had it removed during yesterday's visit. When the bank forecloses in 17 days, guess who will purchase your property at auction? You have 3 choices. 1, return the girl to my custody immediately. I'll forgive the remaining debt and allow you to keep your ranch, though you'll leave Cochise County within a week. 2, keep the girl. The bank forecloses. I buy your land. You become homeless, and I'll petition to have you arrested for kidnapping a mentally incompetent minor. Federal marshals are slow to respond to such claims, but they do respond eventually. You'll spend years fighting charges while the girl returns to my care anyway. 3, run. Take her and flee the territory. Live as fugitives, always looking over your shoulders, never safe. I have friends in Santa Fe, Tucson, even California. We'll find you. You have 48 hours to decide. Tick-tock, hero. Cordially, Eleanor Thornton. The letter slipped from Ethan's fingers and drifted to the floor. Anya picked it up, read it, and went perfectly still. Then she moved mechanically to her room and began pulling items from the small chest of drawers, the few pieces of clothing he'd given her, the slate, the chalk. She was packing. "What are you doing?" Ethan's voice sounded distant in his own ears. She emerged with her bag and wrote on the slate with shaking hands, "I'm going back. Tonight. You don't deserve this. No. You'll lose everything. Your home. Your freedom. For what? For a broken girl who can't even speak. You're not broken." She threw the slate across the room. It shattered against the wall. The sound of her breath came harsh and ragged. She grabbed another piece of paper, scribbling frantically, "I am broken. My father is dead. Doctor, Wright is dead. Everyone who tries to help me dies. I should have died too. I should have." Her hand stopped. The pencil fell. And then, for the first time in 7 years, Anya Miller made a sound, not words, just raw, wrenching sobs that tore from her throat like something physical being ripped away. She collapsed to her knees, hands covering her face, and the sounds kept coming, years of grief and terror and suffocated screams finally breaking free. Ethan knelt beside her but didn't touch. Just stayed there while she shattered. When the sobs finally subsided to hitching breaths, he spoke quietly. "You can make sounds." She looked up at him, face streaked with tears, and nodded. "Your voice isn't gone. It's just locked." Another nod. Ethan picked up the pieces of the broken slate, turning them over in his hands. Everything was broken. The hope from last night felt like a cruel joke now dangled in front of them, just so it could be snatched away. Dr. Wright was dead. The evidence was ash. The law was bought. Mrs. Thornton held every card. And in 48 hours, Ethan would have to choose between condemning himself or condemning Anya. He looked at the girl kneeling on his floor, still trying to muffle the sounds of her crying because, even now, even shattered, she was trying not to be a burden. "I'm not giving up on you," he said. Anya shook her head and reached for more paper. Her handwriting was barely legible. "Then you're a fool." "Probably," Ethan agreed. "But I'm not giving up." He had no plan. No allies, no money, no options. Just 17 days until he lost everything. And a promise he had no idea how to keep. Day 1 after the fire. Ethan rode to the Morrison Ranch 20 miles west. Samuel Morrison had bought cattle from him before, honest trades, fair prices, handshake deals. Samuel met him at the fence line and wouldn't let him past it. "I'm sorry, Ethan. Sheriff came by yesterday. Said anyone doing business with you might find themselves under investigation for rustling." The older man's face was pained. "I can't risk it. I've got grandchildren to think about." Day 2. Ethan tried the Garrett spread. Walter Garrett was a friend had helped raise Ethan's barn 5 years back. Walter wouldn't come to the door. His wife spoke through a crack, her voice barely audible. "We're scared. Ethan, please don't come back." Day 3. Ethan rode to 3 more ranches. All the doors were closed. One man actually drew a rifle when Ethan approached, shouting for him to get off his property. The Thorntons had poisoned every well in the county. On day 4, a letter arrived from First National Bank. Final notice payment of $800 due in 13 days. Failure to remit will result in immediate foreclosure proceedings and property auction. No extensions will be granted. Ethan sat at the kitchen table and did the math for the 100th time. Even if he sold every cow, every horse, every stick of furniture, he'd still fall short, and no one would buy from him anyway. He picked up the coat Sarah had sewn for him 10 years ago, ran his fingers over the careful stitches, and whispered to the empty air, "I'm failing. I'm sorry I'm failing." The coat smelled like dust and faded memories. That same afternoon, Anya disappeared. Ethan searched the ranch in a panic, calling her name even though she couldn't answer. The cellar, the barn, the cattle pens all empty. Her few possessions were still in her room, but she was gone. He saddled his horse and rode toward town, dread mounting with every mile. He found her at Chen's Laundry on the edge of Dusty Creek, a tiny establishment run by Margaret Chen, a widow from Ireland who'd married a railroad worker and inherited his business. Anya stood at a massive iron washboard, scrubbing linens in water so hot steam rose from the basin. Her hands were bright red, blistered at the knuckles. "How long has she been here?" Ethan demanded. "Mrs. Chen looked up from her mending, sympathy in her lined face. 3 days now. Comes at dawn, works until dark, won't take breaks, won't hardly eat. I tried to send her home, but she just shakes her head and keeps working." Ethan crossed to Anya. "What are you doing?" She didn't look up, just kept scrubbing. Her movements were mechanical, relentless. He put his hand over hers, stilling them. She finally met his eyes and reached for a scrap of paper on the table beside her. "I earned 6. It's not much, but it's something." She pulled 6 crumpled dollar bills from her pocket, damp with sweat and wash water, and pressed them into his palm. "I don't want your money," Ethan said, his voice cracking. "You gave me freedom. Let me give you the same." The words broke something in him. He looked at this girl who'd survived 7 years of hell, who'd lost everyone she'd ever loved, and she was trying to save him with $6 earned by bleeding hands. "Stop," he whispered. "Please stop." She shook her head and turned back to the washboard. Ethan Mackenzie, who hadn't cried in 10 years, not when Sarah died. Not when he'd buried her alone on the hill behind their house. Not through any of the hard, lonely years since fell to his knees in Margaret Chen's laundry and wept. The sound of it shocked him. Great, heaving sobs that came from somewhere deep and broken. He pressed his hands to his face, but couldn't stop. "I can't protect you," he gasped. "I can't even protect myself." Anya knelt beside him. For a moment, she just sat there, uncertain. Then, hesitantly, she placed one blistered hand on his shoulder. The other customers in the laundry looked away, embarrassed by the sight of a grown man breaking down. But Mrs. Chen came over and put a gentle hand on Ethan's head. "Grief takes its time," she said softly. "No shame in it." Eventually, the tears stopped. Ethan stood, hollow and exhausted. He looked at the men of Dusty Creek, who'd witnessed his collapse, men who'd done nothing when Anya was sold in the street, who did nothing now as the Thorntons destroyed her last chance at justice. They turned away, one by one. Ethan took Anya's hand, careful of the blisters, and led her to the wagon. They were nearly home when the rider appeared. Jake Morrison sat on his horse in the middle of the road, backlit by the setting sun. The snake tattoo seemed to writhe on his arm as he dismounted. "Got a message from Mrs. Thornton," Jake called. seeing as you've got about 36 hours left on that deadline. Ethan's hand moved toward his gun. Easy now, Jake said, hands raised in mock surrender. Just delivering words, not lead. Say it and get out. Mrs. Thornton wants you to know she's a generous woman. She'll take the girl back and give you $100 to start over somewhere else. Fresh start, no hard feelings. Everyone walks away. He smiled, showing tobacco-stained teeth. Or, and this is the part she really wanted me to emphasize, she'll take the girl and the ranch. Your choice which way you want to lose. We're not done fighting, Ethan said. Sure looks like you are. Jake's eyes flicked to Anya. Girl knows it too. Look at her. Anya stared at her ruined hands, shoulders slumped in defeat. Jake mounted his horse. Tomorrow night, Mackenzie, Mrs. Thornton expects an answer. He rode off, whistling, back at the ranch. Ethan unhitched the wagon in silence. When he came inside, Anya was setting the table for supper: salt pork and beans, the last of their supplies. They ate without speaking. After dark, Ethan sat on the porch while Anya cleaned the dishes. The stars came out, cold and distant. He must have dozed because when he opened his eyes, the house was dark and silent. He went inside to check on Anya. Her door was open. The room was empty. On the kitchen table, he found a letter in her careful handwriting. Dear Ethan, my whole life I've been a burden to my father, who had to raise me alone, to you, who saved me from one prison only to trap yourself in another. I thought freedom meant running away from her. But real freedom is choosing to suffer so others don't have to. I'm going back to Mrs. Thornton tomorrow morning. Please don't follow me. Please don't try to stop me. You showed me what kindness looks like. You showed me that some people still fight for what's right, even when it costs them everything. That's enough. It has to be enough. Thank you for giving me 2 weeks of believing I could be free. I'll remember them forever. Anya, beside the letter, sat the old guitar that had belonged to Sarah, the one Anya had touched but never played. Ethan grabbed his coat and ran for the barn. Her horse was gone. Ethan rode through darkness, following the trail of hoof prints in the moonlight. The tracks didn't lead toward town, as he'd feared, but south toward the old cemetery, where Dusty Creek's earliest settlers were buried, where John Miller rested in unmarked ground. He found Anya's horse tied to the cemetery fence. She knelt before a simple wooden cross, her silhouette small against the vast Arizona sky. Her lips moved silently, as if in conversation with someone only she could see. Ethan dismounted quietly and stood at a distance, unwilling to intrude on what felt like sacred ground. After several minutes, Anya's shoulders sagged. She placed both palms flat on the sun-baked earth and bowed her head. Your father saved my life, Ethan said softly. She didn't startle, just nodded, as if she'd known he would come. Now I understand why. He moved closer but didn't sit. He wanted me to be here. For this moment. For you. Anya shook her head and reached for her paper and pencil. She wrote quickly, You've done enough. More than enough. This isn't your fight anymore. Then whose fight is it? Mine. And I choose to surrender. That's not surrender. That's sacrifice. There's a difference. She looked up at him, eyes reflecting starlight and grief. Ethan sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. For a long time, they simply existed there in silence, the living and the dead keeping company in the darkness. Finally, he spoke. I need to be honest with you, Anya, about what happens next. She tensed. If you go back to Mrs. Thornton, I lose the ranch in 12 days. She'll buy it for nothing at auction. I'll probably be arrested on false charges, kidnapping, theft, whatever she invents. And you? He paused. You'll spend the rest of your life in that hell. Maybe she'll kill you eventually, when she's sure there's no evidence left. Maybe she'll just break you until there's nothing left to kill. Anya's hand trembled as she wrote, but you'll be alive. Will I, or will I just be breathing? Ethan picked up a handful of dry earth, let it sift through his fingers. I've been breathing for 10 years, Anya. Since Sarah died. Just going through motions, working land, watching seasons pass. That's not living. That's just waiting to die. He turned to face her fully. These past 2 weeks fighting for you. Fighting with you, that's the first time in a decade I've felt alive. Felt like something mattered beyond the next harvest or the next bank payment. You matter, she wrote. So do you. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Anya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing dirt across her cheek. There's another option, Ethan said carefully. One that's probably insane. But I want you to hear it before you decide. She waited. We go to Mrs. Thornton's house. Together. Tonight. Her eyes widened. We offer her everything I have left the ranch deed. The remaining cattle, whatever money I can scrape together. In exchange, she gives us the real deed to your father's land and signs a legal document releasing all claims to you. She'll never agree. Anya wrote. Maybe not. But if we don't try, we've already lost. And if she refuses, Ethan met her gaze steadily. Then she has us both arrested on the spot. Sheriff Thornton makes sure we never see daylight again. We lose everything. Anya stared at him. You're willing to risk that. I'm willing to risk anything for a chance at real justice. Not the coward's justice of giving up. Not the fugitive's justice of running forever. But standing up and demanding what's right, even if it destroys us. That's not justice, she wrote. That's suicide. Maybe. But it's honest. Ethan's voice hardened with determination. Your father's land is your birthright. Your freedom is your right. If I can't help you get those things back, then saving you from that auction block meant nothing. Anya looked down at her father's grave, at the weathered cross that bore his name in fading paint. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of sage and dust. She closed her eyes, and in her mind, she saw him her father, younger and smiling, teaching her to play guitar on the porch of the ranch that should have been hers. What would you do, Papa? She asked silently. The imagined voice came back clear and strong, mirrors loud. Anya. But courage is louder. She opened her eyes and reached for her pencil. Her hand was steady as she wrote. When do we go? Relief and terror flooded through Ethan in equal measure. Now, before I lose my nerve. They stood together, brushing cemetery dust from their clothes. Anya placed one hand on her father's grave marker. We'll make this right. Ethan promised the dead man. Or die trying. They rode back to the ranch in silence. Inside, Ethan gathered what little they had left the forged deed to Miller Ranch, his last $37, the deed to his own ranch that Mrs. Thornton's men had somehow overlooked. All of it went into a leather satchel. Anya emerged from her room carrying Sarah's guitar. "Why do you need that?" Ethan asked. She wrote, "Trust me." He didn't understand, but he nodded. They prepared to leave, checking the horses, securing saddles, as Ethan loaded his rifle. Anya touched his arm and shook her head firmly. She pointed to the gun, then made an X with her fingers. "No weapons." She nodded and wrote, "We go to make a deal, not to start a war." "Anya, these people killed your father, killed Dr. Wright. They won't hesitate to." She placed her hand over his. Her eyes held something he hadn't seen before. Not hope, exactly, but something harder. Something forged in 7 years of surviving the unsurvivable. If we go armed, we're the criminals. We go unarmed, we're the victims seeking justice. There's a difference. Ethan wanted to argue. Every instinct screamed to bring the rifle. But he saw the determination in her face and realized she was right. They left the guns. The ride to the Thornton mansion took 40 minutes. The house loomed on the hill overlooking Dusty Creek, 2 stories of whitewashed wood and pretension, built with blood money and stolen land. Lights blazed in every window. Jake Morrison and 2 other men stood guard at the gate. The sheriff's horse was tied at the hitching post. They were expected. Ethan and Anya sat on their horses at the edge of the property, looking up at the house. This was the moment. Once they rode through that gate, there would be no turning back. "Last chance to change your mind," Ethan said quietly. Anya reached over and took his hand. Her grip was strong despite the blisters. She didn't need to write anything. The answer was in her eyes. Together, they urged their horses forward. Jake Morrison stepped into their path as they approached. Well, come to accept Mrs. Thornton's generous offer. We've come to make our own offer," Ethan said. Jake's smile was reptilian. "She's waiting for you." He gestured toward the house. Ethan dismounted and helped Anya down. She clutched the guitar case to her chest like armor. The front door opened. Sheriff William Thornton stood in the entrance, hand resting on his gun belt. "You're either very brave or very stupid. Mackenzie." "Maybe both," Ethan said. They walked toward the house, toward Eleanor Thornton, toward whatever ending waited in that parlor of lies and stolen lives. Anya's hand found his in the darkness. They climbed the porch steps together. The parlor reeked of lavender and lies. Eleanor Thornton sat in a high-backed chair upholstered in burgundy velvet, positioned like a throne at the far end of the room. She wore black silk despite the heat, her silver hair pinned in an elaborate arrangement that must have taken hours. She looked like royalty. She looked like a killer. "Mr. Mackenzie," and the prodigal mute returns. "Mrs." Thornton's voice dripped false warmth. "Please, sit. We have much to discuss." "We'll stand," Ethan said. Sheriff Thornton moved to block the door behind them. Jake Morrison leaned against the wall to their left, arms crossed. 2 more men Ethan didn't recognize stood by the windows. They were surrounded. "Mrs." Thornton smiled. "Suit yourself. You said you came to make an offer." Ethan set the leather satchel on the marble-top table between them. "Everything I own. The deed to Silver Creek Ranch, what's left of my cattle, and $37 cash, in exchange for the real deed to Miller Ranch, and a signed legal document releasing all claims to Anya, stating she was never your ward, never your property, never anything but a free citizen you illegally detained. Mrs. Thornton's laugh was crystalline and cruel. You're joking. I'm not. Why on earth would I negotiate when I already own you? She leaned forward, eyes glittering. In 12 days, the bank forecloses. I'll buy your ranch for pennies at auction. The girl comes back to me by default. She has nowhere else to go. And you? She waved dismissively. You'll be arrested for kidnapping a mentally incompetent minor. I've already filed the complaint with the territorial governor. She's not mentally incompetent, Ethan said. I have a doctor's sworn statement saying otherwise. Oh, wait. Mrs. Thornton pressed a hand to her chest in mock grief. That doctor died in a tragic fire. How unfortunate. Anya's hand tightened on the guitar case. You murdered him, Ethan said flatly. Careful with accusations. Mr. Mackenzie. Slander is also a crime. Mrs. Thornton's smile never wavered. I think we're done here. Sheriff, please escort our guests out. Wait. Anya's voice came out harsh and unused, like rusted hinges. I have something you need to see. The room went silent. Mrs. Thornton's composure cracked for half a second, pure shock crossing her face before the mask slammed back into place. The mute speaks. How dramatic. Anya set the guitar case on the table and opened it. But instead of the instrument, the case was filled with papers. She pulled out a leather-bound sketchbook, worn at the edges from years of handling. This is what your men were looking for when they ransacked the ranch, Anya said, her voice gaining strength with each word. What you've been terrified I'd remember for 7 years. She opened the book. The first page showed a man with kind eyes, John Miller, drawn in careful detail, smiling as he worked on a fence. Mrs. Thornton's face went pale. Anya turned the page. June 14th, 1875, the night before my father died. The drawing showed Mrs. Thornton handing a stack of bills to a man with a snake tattoo. Jake Morrison, younger but unmistakable. That's... Sheriff Thornton stepped closer, staring. Mother, what is this? Children's fantasies. Mrs. Thornton said quickly. She was 12. Traumatized. You can't trust. Anya turned another page. The next drawing stopped all protest. It showed a man, John Miller, on his knees, a knife protruding from his back. Jake Morrison stood behind him, and in the background, illuminated by lantern light, Eleanor Thornton watched with cold satisfaction. At the bottom, in a child's careful handwriting, I saw everything. I was hiding in the barn loft. No. Sheriff Thornton's voice cracked. No, Mother, tell me this isn't real. William, don't be absurd. Tell me. The sheriff grabbed the sketchbook, flipping through page after page of documented murder. His hands shook. You said Father's wagon accident was how we inherited Miller Ranch. You said the girl came to us because she had nowhere else to go. I did what was necessary. Mrs. Thornton said, steel entering her voice. That land was wasted on a drunk farmer and his useless daughter. I built our fortune. I made you sheriff. Everything you have is because I had the courage to. You made me sheriff with blood money. The words came out strangled. Every campaign, every election, every time I swore to uphold the law, it was all built on murder. Oh, grow up, William. This is how the world works. Ethan saw his opening. I sent copies of those drawings to the U.S. Marshal in Santa Fe 3 days ago, along with a sworn statement. It was a complete bluff. He'd sent nothing. But Mrs. Thornton didn't know that. Her composure shattered. You're lying. Am I? Ethan held her gaze. Want to bet your freedom on it. Jake Morrison pushed off the wall. Mrs. Thornton, if there's a federal investigation. Shut up, Jake. I'm already going to hang for this, Jake continued, voice rising. But I'm done protecting you. I've lived with this for 7 years. Every night, I see his face. I'm done. You'll do as you're told. Mrs. Thornton hissed. No. Jake turned to the sheriff. I stabbed John Miller on her orders, October 14th, 1875. She paid me $500 and promised me work if you became sheriff. I buried him in the cemetery, and we staged the wagon accident. Sheriff Thornton looked at his mother as if seeing a stranger. Why? Because weak men like John Miller don't deserve good land. Mrs. Thornton stood, fury replacing fear. Because I was tired of being poor. Because I wanted more for us, for you. You wanted more for yourself, the sheriff whispered. Anya set the guitar on the table and pulled it from its case. The instrument was old, the wood worn smooth by years of use. What are you doing? Mrs. Thornton demanded. Anya didn't answer. She sat down, positioned the guitar, and began to play. The melody was Red River Valley, simple, mournful, achingly beautiful. Then she began to sing. Her voice was raw, unpracticed, broken by 7 years of silence. But it was clear, real, undeniable. From this valley they say you are going. We will miss your bright eyes and sweet smile. Mrs. Thornton's face twisted with rage. Stop it! Stop it! But Anya kept singing, her voice growing stronger. Each note was an accusation, each word a testimony. She sang of loss and betrayal, of fathers stolen and childhoods destroyed, of voices taken and freedom denied. The men in the room stood transfixed. When the song ended, Anya stood and looked directly at Eleanor Thornton. You took my voice, she said. Words steady now. But you can't take my truth. Sheriff Thornton pulled handcuffs from his belt. Eleanor Thornton, you're under arrest for the murder of John Miller. You ungrateful. Mrs. Thornton lunged toward the desk drawer. The sheriff was faster. He caught her wrist. Don't! She struggled, then went limp in his grip, and began to laugh a high, brittle sound that raised the hair on Ethan's neck. You think this is over, she said. You think arresting me changes anything I own this town. I own the judge. I own... A gunshot exploded through the room. Everyone froze. Mrs. Thornton staggered backward, a red stain blooming across her black dress. She looked down at it in confusion, then up at Jake Morrison. Jake stood with a smoking pistol in his hand, face blank with shock. You were reaching for your gun, he said numbly. I thought you were going to... Mrs. Thornton collapsed. Sheriff Thornton dropped to his knees beside her. Mother, stay with me. Blood pooled on the expensive carpet. Ethan grabbed Anya and pulled her behind him as chaos erupted. The other men rushed forward. Someone was shouting for a doctor. Mrs. Thornton's eyes found Anya's across the room. With her last breath, she smiled a terrible, triumphant smile. Even dead, she whispered. I win. They'll hang you all for this. Then her eyes went empty. Sheriff William Thornton knelt in his mother's blood and made a choice. He looked up at Jake Morrison, still holding the smoking gun. Then at Ethan and Anya pressed against the wall. His face was a portrait of devastation. Everything he'd believed about his life had just died along with Eleanor Thornton. "Put the gun down, Jake," he said quietly. Jake set the pistol on the table with shaking hands. "You two," the sheriff said to Ethan and Anya, "don't move, don't speak." He turned to his deputies. "Get Dr. Patterson and send word to Santa Fe we need a federal marshal here immediately. But boss, your mother, is a murderer who died reaching for a weapon." The words came out hollow. "We do this by the law. The real law, not the version she corrupted." 3 days later, a makeshift courtroom was assembled in Dusty Creek's largest building, the Methodist Church. Federal Judge Henry Blackwood arrived from Santa Fe with a court stenographer and 2 U.S. Marshals. Their presence a reassurance that justice might actually be possible. The pews overflowed with townspeople who'd spent 7 years looking the other way. Now they crowded in, hungry for absolution through witnessing. Jake Morrison sat in chains, charged with murder in the death of John Miller. Self-defense in the shooting of Eleanor Thornton, that charge had been dropped after 4 witnesses corroborated his testimony that she'd been reaching for a concealed weapon. But John Miller's murder demanded accounting. Judge Blackwood was 65, with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen every variation of human cruelty. He surveyed the packed church with obvious distaste. "This court is convened to hear testimony in the matter of the Territory versus James Morrison," he announced. "Counselors, present your opening statements." The prosecutor, a sharp young lawyer from Santa Fe, laid out the case with clinical precision. Jake Morrison had confessed to stabbing John Miller on October 14, 1875, at the behest of Eleanor Thornton. The motive was property acquisition. The method was premeditated murder staged as an accident. Jake's defense attorney, a local man clearly out of his depth, could only argue for leniency based on his client's cooperation and remorse. Then came the evidence. Anya's sketchbook was entered into the record. Judge Blackwood examined each drawing carefully, his expression darkening with every page. "These were drawn by you, Miss Miller?" he asked. Anya stood. "Yes, Your Honor. The night after I watched my father die." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Most had never heard her speak. "And why did you not come forward at the time?" "I was 12 years old. Mrs. Thornton told me that if I ever spoke a word about what I saw, she'd kill me too. She said no one would believe a child anyway." Anya's voice was steady, though her hands gripped the witness rail. "I lost my voice that night. Not because I couldn't speak, because I was too terrified to. And yet you speak now, because I'm not afraid anymore." She looked directly at Jake Morrison. "And because my father deserves the truth, even if it's 7 years late." The defense attorney attempted cross-examination. "Isn't it convenient that you found your voice precisely when it benefits your case? How do we know you're not fabricating this story to claim your father's property?" Judge Blackwood's gavel cracked like thunder. "Counselor, I've reviewed Dr. Wright's medical records recovered from his office safe before the fire consumed everything. They clearly state the girl's mutism was psychological, not physical. Her testimony stands." The trial continued through the afternoon. Jake Morrison took the stand and confessed in full detail the payment, The murder. The cover-up. His voice never wavered, as if confession were the only absolution available. "Why come forward now?" the prosecutor asked. "Because I'm tired of being a coward." Jake looked at Anya. "I took your father from you. I helped that woman steal 7 years of your life. No amount of prison time will make that right. But at least the truth is out." After 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned. "We find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree." Judge Blackwood sentenced Jake Morrison to life imprisonment at Yuma Territorial Prison. No possibility of parole. As marshals led him away, Jake paused beside Anya. "I'm sorry," was all he said. She didn't respond. Some debts couldn't be paid with words. The property settlement came next. Judge Blackwood reviewed the forged deed transferring Miller Ranch to Eleanor Thornton and declared it fraudulent. "The land reverts to its rightful heir, Miss Anya Miller." He looked at Ethan. "As for your debt, Mr. Mackenzie, I'm ordering the bank to forgive it in full." Eleanor Thornton manipulated the lending terms and payment schedule through her influence on the bank board. "You were targeted for helping Miss Miller." Relief crashed through Ethan like a wave. But Anya stood immediately. "Your Honor, I have a request." "Speak." "I want to transfer half ownership of Miller Ranch to Ethan Mackenzie. He risked everything for me. That land should be ours, not just mine." "Miss Miller, you don't have to." "I already filed the papers 3 days ago," she said quietly. "It's done." Ethan stared at her. "When how?" "Mrs. Chen helped me the morning before we went to the Thornton house." Anya's expression was resolute. "You gave me freedom. I'm giving you a home." The judge approved the transfer with a nod. One final matter remained. Sheriff William Thornton stood before the bench, his badge in his hand. "Your Honor, I'm resigning my position, effective immediately." "On what grounds?" "I wore this badge believing I served justice. I served my mother's crimes instead." His voice cracked. "I can't wear it knowing what it was built on." "Where will you go?" "Somewhere I can start over without her shadow." He looked at Anya. "I'm sorry I didn't see the truth sooner. I'm sorry I didn't protect you." She nodded. Not forgiveness exactly, but acknowledgement. The trial concluded as sunset painted the church windows gold and crimson. People filed out in silence, the weight of 7 years of complicity heavy on their shoulders. Outside, Ethan and Anya stood together on the church steps. "What now?" he asked. "Now we go home," Anya said. Then, softer, both of us. They walked to their horses through a town transformed. Faces that had turned away 2 weeks ago now met their eyes with shame and respect. Martha Hayes from the boarding house approached tentatively. "Miss Miller, we're organizing a community workday next Saturday to help rebuild your father's ranch house, if you'll have us." Anya looked at the gathered townspeople, men and women, who'd been silent when she needed them most. "Everyone is welcome," she said finally. "It's time to build something better than what came before." As they rode toward Miller Ranch, their ranch now the sun dipped below the horizon. Ethan noticed Anya was humming softly. Not singing yet, but the precursor to song. "What happens to the Thornton property?" she asked. "Judge ordered it liquidated. Proceeds will go to restitution, including funds for Dr. Wright's family. And Mrs. Thornton, buried in the paupers section. No marker, no mourners." Anya was quiet for a moment. Then, "I don't feel triumphant, just tired. Justice isn't always satisfying, Ethan said. Sometimes it's just necessary. They rode the rest of the way in comfortable silence. Two people who'd lost everything and found something better in the wreckage. 6 months passed like gentle rain after drought. Miller Mackenzie Ranch flourished under shared stewardship. The community workday had stretched into weeks of rebuilding townspeople, arriving with lumber, nails, and guilty consciences, constructing something better than what Eleanor Thornton had destroyed. Every Sunday, Anya sang in the church choir. Her voice, once locked by terror, now filled the valley with proof that broken things could heal. Children gathered at the ranch on Saturday mornings for music lessons. Anya taught them more than melodies. She taught them that silence could be survival. But speaking truth was freedom. Ethan worked the land with purpose he'd forgotten existed. The ranch wasn't just property anymore. It was home, built on partnership rather than loneliness. One evening, they sat on the porch watching fireflies dance over the fields. Anya leaned against Ethan's shoulder, comfortable in the quiet they'd earned together. I used to think gratitude meant accepting what you're given, she said softly. Now I know it means fighting for what you deserve, then sharing it with those who fought beside you. Ethan smiled. Your father would be proud. So would Sarah. They sat together as stars emerged. Two survivors who'd learned that family isn't just blood, it's anyone brave enough to stand with you when the world demands your silence. Have you ever witnessed injustice and stayed silent, only to regret it later?